Imagine for a moment that the deepest parts of your soul were torn open, not by fate, not by accident, but by the very hands you once trusted. Picture the pain that didn't just pierce your heart, but shredded the sanctuary within you, where peace and innocence once lived. You were not merely hurt, you were ripped apart. And not a single apology stitched you back. No healing hands reached to cover your wounds. Instead, silence followed. Indifference, mockery. And you were left to gather the fragments of yourself with trembling fingers in a world that didn't seem to notice you were bleeding from the inside out. There are wounds the eyes cannot see. There is a form of suffering that language fails to capture. This is the agony that comes when betrayal touches not just your mind, but your spirit. When someone doesn't just disappoint you, but desecrates the sacred within you. They laughed, they walked away. They painted your pain as weakness and your loyalty as foolishness, and while they moved on with their lives, you were left screaming silently into your pillow, asking God why He allowed such cruelty to pass through His hands and into your life. But my dear listener, do not be deceived by the calm on their surface. You see, God is not asleep. He does not overlook what man does in darkness, especially to those whose hearts were pure. There are laws higher than man's courts. There are divine ledgers where every injustice is noted, every tear recorded. And while you were breaking, heaven was writing a story not just of your pain, but of their consequences. You may wonder, why didn't God stop them? Why didn't lightning strike the moment they ripped your soul apart? Because God is not impulsive in His justice. He is precise. He allows the proud to climb high, so their fall is seen by all. He allows the wicked to build, so when He tears it down, the ruins testify. And I tell you now, what they built on your brokenness will not stand. What they stitched together from their lies will unravel. What they celebrated while you suffered will become the very reason they weep. There's a justice that moves slower than our rage, but more devastating than our revenge. It is God's justice. Divine retribution is not always loud, but it is always exact. And when it comes, it does not miss. They didn't just hurt you. They hurt a child of God. They didn't just break trust. They violated a divine bond. And that does not go unanswered. You see, when God chooses to respond, He doesn't simply repay pain with pain. He delivers revelation with it. He exposes the hearts of the arrogant. He shows them through loss and misery the value of what they once mocked. He lets the silence they gave you become the loneliness they can't escape. He lets the peace they stole from you become the chaos that consumes them. And the same hands they used to rip your soul open will soon grasp desperately for mercy they once denied you. But this isn't just about vengeance. It's about restoration. God doesn't just judge the wicked. He heals the wounded. He doesn't just punish evil. He honors the broken. You will not remain in this pain forever. The same God who allowed the wound will now become your surgeon, and His stitches will not be made of thread, but of purpose, glory, and a peace the world cannot touch. Your scars will shine as proof not of what they did, but of what God rebuilt. So now, let your silence speak louder than your suffering. Let your survival be your loudest shout. And know, without a doubt, that the God who saw you torn apart will now make them unravel, not by your hands, but by His. And when their life begins to come undone, it will not be you who watches with vengeance. It will be you who walks in peace, knowing heaven took over the fight. There is a divine intelligence far greater than the mind of man. It watches, it listens, and more importantly, it remembers. You see, When someone harms you in secret, when they violate your trust, trample your dignity, and walk away as if you never mattered, they may forget. The world may forget. Even your friends may forget. But heaven never does. What they did was recorded, not in ink, but in tears, not in words, but in the aching groans of your spirit that only God could hear. Every time you cried and no one came, heaven paid attention. Every silent breakdown behind closed doors, every moment you sat alone asking, "Why me?" Those moments echoed through the halls of eternity. People often mistake God's silence for blindness. They think because lightning didn't strike the moment they caused you pain, that they've escaped judgment. But God's justice is not immediate. It is perfect. He waits not because he forgets, but because he prepares. And what he prepares is not only an answer for them, but a healing for you. When they ripped your soul open, when they laughed while you wept, God was not unaware. His spirit was closer to you than your own breath. He saw it all, not just the act, but the intent behind it. And that is what matters to God. You see, heaven doesn't just record the outcome, it records the motive. They knew you were innocent, they knew your heart was pure, and still they chose to tear you down. That kind of cruelty doesn't go unnoticed by a God who calls himself defender of the weak. Some people think they can deceive both man and God. They smile in public, play victim and spin stories, but heaven doesn't need their version. Heaven saw the real one, the way they twisted truth, the way they buried you with lies, the way they rejoiced in your downfall while pretending to care. All of it written, not just in books, but in eternity. And God, the righteous judge, never closes a case that involves the suffering of his chosen. There will come a moment so unexpected that they will realize their peace has evaporated. They'll look around and wonder why their plans fall apart, why their joy seems short-lived, why they can't find comfort no matter how much they gain. It won't be punishment, it will be memory, not theirs, but heaven's. What they did to you has been stored in the very heart of God, and when the time comes, he will respond not out of anger, but out of justice. So rest. You don't need to avenge yourself. You don't need to force the truth out or prove your innocence. The one who knows all has already written your case into his holy records, and those records never expire, never fade, and never lie. Heaven has not forgotten what they did, and neither will God. It's one of the most painful truths to accept, that God sometimes waits. When you've been wronged, betrayed, broken, it feels unbearable to sit in the silence of heaven and wonder why nothing is happening. Why the ones who hurt you seem to flourish while you can barely breathe. But that delay is not neglect. That pause is not indifference. God delays justice not because he's unwilling, but because he's deliberate. It says, when he moves, it is not shallow, it is not temporary, it is final, unforgettable, and undeniable. If he acted in haste, the consequences might not penetrate deeply enough. The lesson might go unheard. The pride might survive. But when he waits, he does so with purpose, to make the impact eternal. Just as crops take time to grow before they can be harvested, so does divine justice. The longer it takes, the heavier it lands. While they believe they've escaped, God is allowing them to build higher, so their fall is greater. He allows them to gain momentum, not as a reward, but as a setup, because when the unraveling begins, it will be from the top down. There's a strange mercy in delay. It gives the wrongdoer time to repent, to reflect, to change. But if they use that time to boast, to mock, or to continue harming others, then that mercy transforms into the weight of consequence. You see, God doesn't act out of emotion. He acts out of righteousness, and righteousness takes its time to measure every angle, so that when judgment falls, it fits perfectly. No more, no less. Just enough to teach, just enough to humble, just enough to make them cry out in the same pain they once ignored in you. While you sit in confusion, God sits in strategy. While you question his absence, he prepares their downfall. His justice is not a single moment, it's a masterpiece. And every piece is placed with holy precision. Let them laugh now. Let them enjoy their illusion of success. It won't last. Because what God is preparing isn't just your rise, it's their reckoning. And when it happens, it won't be subtle. It will be loud, it will be public, it will be undeniable. The same way they shamed you openly, they will be humbled openly. The delay wasn't denial, it was design. And that design is about to unfold. There is a spiritual law woven into the fabric of creation. What is sown in shadows will bloom in daylight. When someone chooses darkness over light, when they injure others, deceive, manipulate, and crush the innocent for selfish gain, it doesn't disappear into the void. It festers. It accumulates. It echoes. The universe, under God's command, is not silent about sin. And though it may not scream in the moment, it always speaks, eventually. They thought they could wear masks forever, that they could pretend to be righteous while acting like tyrants behind the curtain. But no one escapes the truth for long, not when heaven has seen everything. You see, God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. When he begins to respond, he doesn't just expose the darkness. They try to hide. He forces them to live in it. Their lives begin to look like the very pain they caused others. Their laughter turns hollow. Their peace collapses under its own weight. Their comforts become cages. It is not karma, it is consequence. And that consequence is not random, it is surgical. God doesn't just react, he constructs. He allows their choices to lead them into misery, not as cruelty but as reflection. What they inflicted on your heart, they will feel in their own home. The lies they told to damage your name will return to stain theirs. The joy they had watching you fall will now vanish, as they themselves begin to slip with no one there to catch them. Their betrayal will revisit them through the mouths of those they trusted most. They may try to hold it together, they may put on a show, but behind the scenes things will break, slowly at first, then all at once. And it won't be something you orchestrated, it will be God himself revealing the truth by letting their own life unravel in front of them. He turns their beds into battlegrounds of unrest, their days into deserts of emptiness, their smiles into forced performances that no longer convince anyone, not even themselves. This isn't punishment for the sake of vengeance. It's divine alignment. When someone chooses evil while pretending to be good, God doesn't let them stay in that lie forever. He flips the mirror. He turns their life into a canvas where their true intentions are painted clearly. And no matter how they scrub, no matter how they cover it, the stain of what they did to you begins to bleed through everything they touch. It's not that God hates them. It's that he refuses to let them keep hurting people unpunished, especially not his children, especially not you. The time is coming when their darkness will no longer be hidden under success or social approval. The curtain will be pulled, and when it does, everyone will see the rot beneath their performance, and they will be forced to live inside the very misery they once handed to you with pride. Pain is a teacher, but it rarely teaches those who inflict it until they're made to feel it themselves. You cried out in agony, and they turned their faces away. You pleaded for understanding, but they responded with silence, laughter, or worse, blame. They dismissed your suffering as weakness, your loyalty as stupidity, your grief as overreaction. And while you tried to make sense of your own shattered soul, they slept peacefully, unaffected by the damage they caused. But pain has a way of traveling. It is not stationary. What is ignored in one place, God allows to visit another, and when it finally comes to them, it comes not gently, but with purpose, not to destroy, but to teach. You see, they didn't just hurt you. They hardened themselves against compassion. They trained their hearts to feel nothing while tearing yours apart. That kind of callousness must be broken, and pain is the only force strong enough to crack it. God, in His wisdom, doesn't simply bring suffering to the arrogant for revenge. He brings it for instruction. They refused to learn by observation, so now they will learn by experience. The tears they mocked in you will now become their own. The loneliness they pushed you into will now wrap itself around them like a blanket of regret. The confusion they left you in will now fog their minds, making them question everything they thought they understood. It won't be quick. God does not rush the process of transformation. Just as you endured the long nights, the cold mornings, the silent screams, they too will walk through those seasons. But this time there will be no one to ignore them like they ignored you. They will crave sympathy and find none. They will reach out and be met with the same emptiness they once forced you to live with. It is not cruelty. It is justice, and justice in its purest form teaches the lesson they refuse to hear. Their pride will be the first to suffer. Once untouchable, once confident, they will now question everything about themselves. Their charm will stop working. Their control over others will begin to slip, and as they sit alone in the pain they created, they will finally understand what they did to you. It will haunt them. Not just because it hurts, but because they now know exactly how you felt. And they'll have to live with the memory of how they did nothing to stop it when they had the chance. God allows this pain not just as retribution, but as revelation. He shows them their reflection through their suffering, not so they are destroyed, but so they are changed. The lesson will not be easy. It will come through sleepless nights, shattered relationships, financial droughts, or inner turmoil. Whatever means God chooses to reach their heart, but rest assured, the pain they ignored in you will now become the very tool God uses to rewrite their story, a story where they are no longer the teacher, but the student, and this time the lesson will not be missed. There are moments in life when your presence in someone's life is not simply a coincidence. It's a test, not a test for you, but for them. God sent you into their world not to be used, not to be hurt, not to be destroyed, but to reveal what was hidden in their hearts. You came with sincerity. You offered loyalty, honesty, love, and truth. You didn't ask for much, only to be treated with the same respect and honor you gave freely. But instead of cherishing what was pure, they polluted it. Instead of protecting your spirit, they ripped it open. What they didn't know was that heaven was watching. You were not just a person in their story, you were an opportunity to choose light over darkness, to act with integrity, to honor someone who had done no harm. And they failed that test, miserably. They didn't just fail it. They laughed while doing so, thinking there would be no consequence. They didn't recognize that in hurting you, they were insulting the one who sent you. Now God has turned the tables. You, once the test, are becoming the lesson. Your silence is preaching louder than any words. Your endurance is now their reminder. Every time they see someone show kindness, they'll remember how they crushed you when you were kind. Every time they encounter loyalty, they'll remember how they spat on yours. You have become a living parable in their conscience, echoing through their mind, whether they acknowledge it or not. They will carry the memory of you, not as a person they knew, but as a standard they failed, the relationship they sabotaged, the heart they betrayed. And no matter how they try to replace you, imitate what you offered, or forget what they've done, something will always feel missing. That something was you. The version of themselves that could have evolved through your presence will now haunt them as the version they destroyed. You see, some people aren't punished with destruction. Some are punished with memory. God allows them to live long enough to understand what they lost, and He lets your life grow in beauty and strength while theirs becomes a prison of regret. You were the test sent to reveal their capacity to love rightly, and now you are the lesson that teaches what happens when that opportunity is rejected. And it's not just for them, it's for others too. God will use your story as a warning. Others will watch and understand that when you mistreat the pure, you invite disaster. When you betray the kind, you curse yourself. And that's why He didn't just remove you quietly. He elevated you in the very space where they expected you to crumble. Because you weren't just the test, they were being tested by your existence, and they failed. So now, your life becomes the evidence of what they threw away. And God will make sure they never forget it. There's a mystery to how God heals the broken. He doesn't always do it loudly. He doesn't always announce it with trumpet sounds or miracles before crowds. Instead, He works in the quiet, in the stillness, in the moments when no one is watching. While others think you're still crushed, still defeated, still dwelling in pain, God is gently putting your soul back together, piece by piece. He restores what others destroyed, not with noise, but with sacred silence. The world may think you've been forgotten, that because you don't post your victories, you don't have any, that because you don't seek revenge, you must be weak. But what they don't see is the holy transformation happening behind the curtain. While they laugh, you are healing. While they mock, you are rising. Not outwardly, not for show, but inwardly, eternally. Because God's first work is always internal. He repairs your spirit so thoroughly that when you emerge, the pain no longer owns you. The tears have stopped owning your nights. The anxiety no longer rules your mornings. But here's where it becomes powerful. When God is finished with the silent restoration, He shifts everything. What He healed in secret, He now honors in public. Those who watched your collapse will now watch your elevation. Not because you demanded it, but because heaven ordained it. The same people who wrote you off, who stepped on your shattered heart as they walked away, God makes them witnesses, not out of vengeance, but out of justice. So they may see what they thought was ruined become royalty. When God rewards, He does so in a way that erases every ounce of shame they tried to attach to you. He gives you a peace they can't disturb. He blesses you in ways their minds can't comprehend, and while they struggle to keep their lives from falling apart, they'll watch yours bloom in full glory. They'll see you smile again and wonder how. They'll see doors open for you and question why. They'll hear your name spoken with respect and feel the sting of what they once despised now becoming celebrated. And you won't need to say a word. Your existence will speak louder than any speech. Because when God restores, He leaves His fingerprints all over your life. The restoration becomes so undeniable that even your enemies are silenced. And that's how God works. He lets them think they've buried you. and then he resurrects you, not as the same person, but as someone stronger, wiser, and unshakably whole. The reward isn't just about material things. It's about peace, joy, purpose, and divine favor. It's about the kind of life that cannot be explained apart from God. And when people try to trace your rise, they'll have no explanation except to say, surely the Lord was with them. Because God restores in silence, but he rewards in ways no man can ignore. And you, once broken in private, will shine in public, not because of what they did, but because of what God did in response. Sometimes the greatest sermon is not spoken, it is lived. You spent months, maybe years, trying to explain what they did to you. You tried to find the words, the proof, the courage to make others see the truth. You wanted people to understand that behind your silence was a storm. Behind your smile was survival. Behind your withdrawal was betrayal. But no matter how hard you tried, your pain was either ignored, minimized, or dismissed. You were made to look like the problem, while they wore the mask of peace. But now God is raising up something they cannot deny, consequences that speak louder than words. You no longer have to explain what they did. You don't have to relive the wound to prove it was real. God has chosen to let their own misery speak on your behalf. Their downfall will do the storytelling. Their chaos will do the confession. Their loneliness will be the loudest truth you never needed to shout. Because when God steps in, he flips the narrative. He lets their smiles fade into confusion. He lets their perfect life collapse, piece by piece, not to entertain you, but to reveal what was always hidden beneath the surface. Their misery becomes a mirror, and in it, the world begins to see what you lived with in silence. Suddenly, the pain they caused returns, not in whispers, but in storms, not in secret, but in front of all. And while this happens, you won't need to say a word. You'll have no desire to gloat. You'll be too busy healing, growing, rising. That is the power of divine justice. It not only vindicates you, it frees you. While they wrestle with their conscience, you'll rest in peace. While they try to outrun the very ghosts they created, you'll walk confidently in the light of God's restoration. Their misery will explain your silence. Their restlessness will explain your distance. Their regret will explain your withdrawal. And as they finally begin to feel the weight of what they handed you so carelessly, the truth will rise, not from your mouth, but from their collapse. You were never crazy. You were never weak. You were simply the one who got hurt while trying to love right. And now, God has chosen to preach your truth, not with your voice, but with their consequences. So don't waste your time trying to explain what heaven is already exposing. Don't exhaust your soul seeking validation from those who never saw your value. Let their misery speak. Let their silence grow louder than your cries ever did. Let God finish the story in the way only He can, because when He does, it won't just be justice, it will be undeniable. Beloved, if you take nothing else from this, remember this. God never turns a blind eye to betrayal, and He never abandons those who are wounded for loving too deeply. You may have been ripped open by the very people you prayed for. You may have bled silently in the night while they feasted loudly on your downfall. But you were never alone. Heaven stood over your broken body, not to pity you, but to preserve you. Everything they did, every insult, every lie, every dismissal, was written into God's holy ledger. And now He's responding, not with noise, but with divine orchestration. He is stitching your soul in secret while unraveling their peace in public. He is using your suffering as soil for your elevation, and their pride as fuel for their fall. The very misery they ignored in you will now haunt them, and the healing they thought you'd never find, you're already living in it. You don't need to chase revenge. You don't need to force your story to be heard. The one who saw it all is now speaking for you. In their downfall, in your rise, in the silence that follows the storm. God is the perfect author, and this was never your ending, it was your becoming. So stand tall, walk on, and know this truth deep in your soul. They ripped your soul open, but now God will stitch their life shut with misery, not because you asked for it, but because justice belongs to the Lord. Amen.